Okay, we start talking about Piaget. Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Some folks agree with that, some folks don't agree with that, but I have found in my teaching and in my parent experience that this is really close to being on what I saw with my own children. You will have to make up your mind as to whether you agree or not. We all see it, see our own situation as it is, in our own eyes. So let's look at Piaget's basic assumptions. They start on page 26 of your book. If you want to follow along, you'll find a lot of what I say just as we go down through the page. So Piaget introduced a number of ideas and concepts to describe and explain the changes in logical thinking he observed in children and adolescents. First, Piaget said children are active and motivated learners. He believed that children are naturally curious about the world and actively seek out information to help them understand and make sense of it. He also felt like they continually experiment with the objects they encounter, manipulating them and observing the effects of their actions. I think that's exactly what they are. Once again, I go back to that same point of kindergartners and how much they love to learn. Go to preschool, how much they love to learn. Then in 5th grade, if you walk in a 5th grade classroom, what's happened? What has made the difference? I don't think we fall out of being active and motivated learners. I believe it's in how the material is being handled. The next basic assumption says children construct knowledge from their experiences. Children put their experiences together in an integrated view of how the world actually operates. Because Piaget proposed that children construct their own beliefs and understandings from their experiences, his theory is sometimes called a constructivist theory, or more generally just constructivism. Children actively construct their own view of the world from their own experiences with the environment, in other words. So once again, everything you've heard thus far, the more experience we can give our children, our students, the better they're going to be, the better the knowledge is going to absorb. The next basic assumption was that children learn through the two complementary processes of assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation actually deals with an object or an event in a way that's consistent with an existing scheme. An example might be when Daniel was younger, he got the soccer ball for Christmas and he bounced it just like he did the basketball he got for Christmas the year before. Well, why does that happen? Well, it's because of what his exposure to the soccer ball or the basketball early on, and now, the soccer ball is around, it bounces it, you must do the same thing. All right, accommodation, on the other hand, children either modify an existing scheme to account for the new object or event, or else form an entirely new scheme to deal with. An example of that might be when Hannah was younger. She realized that those white puffy items in the sky were called clouds. Well, we actually lived, when she was about this age, we lived right there at Berkline, and so there used to be a lot of air pollution. And once while we were driving by Berkline, she saw the air pollution and said, "Look, Mom, a cloud." So we started talking about, and after a brief discussion, she realized that all white puffy objects in the sky did not necessarily mean that they were clouds. Once again, it's that exposure. I guess that's one of the reasons that I'm concerned about parents who plug their kids in everywhere they go, and you yourself may stay plugged in. And my concern is we're missing valuable opportunities to teach a lesson. Accommodation rarely happens without assimilation. Just know that. It's hard to make an accommodation if you've not first had the experience. And then a good teacher will show students how a new topic is similar to the things that they already know, but also different in certain ways as well. That way they can distinguish between the air pollution and the cloud. Yes, Berkline's air pollution did look like big white puffy things in the sky that were very similar to clouds. So you could use that as a very teachable moment. All right, the next one says interactions with one's physical and social environments are essential for cognitive development. Piaget's theory leads us to conclude that discovery learning should be an important aspect of classroom instruction. Discovery learning allows students to kind of work through themselves to answers and finding out how to do things. I don't think we give students enough of the discovery opportunities. They work with their fellow classmates to come to some kind of conclusion based on an answer. I think the new system is allowing us to do that more, but I think discovery learning is a great possibility and should be used daily in the classroom. As I said, perhaps today is Friday, and I said it today in class, the one who does the work does the learning. We need to keep that in mind more as teachers. Social interaction is equally important for cognitive development. Once again, my concern for plugging our kids up everywhere they go, that social aspect is somewhat lost. But through interaction with other people, both pleasant and unpleasant, young children gradually come to realize that different individuals see things differently and that their own view of the world is not necessarily a complete, accurate, or logical one. This is how we expand past our own beliefs sometimes, or it may even make us question some of our beliefs, and who knows where that might lead. All right, the fifth one is the process of equilibration, and equilibration promotes progression toward increasingly complex thought. The state of equilibrium is where children can comfortably interpret and respond to new events using existing schemes, things they already know. All right, then what happens, or what should happen, we go to disequilibrium, and it's kind of a mental discomfort. It spurs children to try to make sense of what they are observing. It's that point where you really don't know, and it's that uncomfortable, oh, I want to know, because you want to be so accurate and you want to be right. And then equilibration is the process of moving from equilibrium, where you're comfortable, to disequilibrium, where you're uncomfortable, and then back to equilibrium again, because you've actually learned how to do something new. So we as teachers should be starting where at a place of equilibrium where the children are familiar. All right, that's the basis to start a lesson. Whether that be a review from yesterday, a review from last week, or the unit before, whatever, we start there, students are comfortable. We then introduce the new material, which gets them uncomfortable, and that's when it takes a lot of us explaining, hand-holding, reaffirming, giving examples, those kind of things. And then once the student learns that new material, they go back to that equilibrium. That whole process should be happening daily in everything you teach. If you don't push the students out of equilibrium where they're comfortable, then that means they're not learning anything new. So if we stop and think about that, what about teachers who go over a chapter and then hand a handout to them? Or what about the teacher who says read the chapter and do the questions at the end? Is that is that moving them to disequilibrium or not? Text me your answer. If a teacher is assigning a chapter and tell them to do the questions at the end, is that equilibrium or disequilibrium? I'm waiting on your answer. Stop the video and text me real fast. All right, in the example of equilibration would be a child revises existing schemes to incorporate the new information. Kind of Hannah's type thing, thinking the cloud was one thing, and then we talk about it, and now she realizes when she looks up, just because it's white doesn't necessarily mean it's a cloud. She has to then think a little deeper to see, okay, is that a cloud or is that air pollution? Equilibration, it's the whole process. And you as a teacher should start where they're at the equilibrium stage, where they're comfortable, then move them to disequilibrium, and then back to equilibrium because they're comfortable with the new information again. All right, and the last one, in part as a result of maturational changes in the brain, children think in qualitatively different ways at different ages, and that's obvious. Long before we knew much about how the brain changes with age, Piaget speculated that it does change in significant ways, and that such changes enable more complex thought processes. You would ask a 3-year-old to do what you would ask a 12-year-old to do. I would think you would know that. Piaget suggests that major neurological changes take place when children are about 2 years old, again when they're 6 or 7, and then they hit puberty, and I don't know what happens. Those are Piaget's basic assumptions.